Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the One to Know podcast. I'm Joel Haas.
And I'm Avery Hill.
Today, we'll talk about what we learned from Pat Kraft. We got to talk to him for the first time in a few months. We also got to talk to new Penn State running backs coach Dan Drayton. We got some kind of initial impressions on him. We'll follow that up with some talk about Trace McSorley, who was recently added to Penn State's staff. And we might round it out with some combine talk if there's time. But to start it off, Avery, we got to hear from Pat Kraft, and he touched on a lot of different topics. What most stood out to you?
I think the most important thing that he talked about is that overall buy-in. Like, he's not just saying, okay, I'm all in on football. He said, I'm all in on football. I'm all in on field hockey. I'm all in on men's hockey, soccer, women's lacrosse. He's probably all in on rugby, too, if they made it a varsity sport. But, I mean, just seeing that overall buy-in from an athletic director is what you want to see, especially, like, you look at James Franklin as a coach, getting that support, and just anyone. If you're getting recruited, you know that this guy is going to put as many resources as he can there for you, and as he said, it's not always the money. Resources can be connections. Resources can just be different opportunities that you get that aren't really defined by the dollar amount. But, I mean, just seeing that, knowing that he is all in is obviously a good sign for the Penn State culture. I mean, obviously everyone wants to win, and everyone would assume that an athletic director is all about winning, but the sad truth is some are, and some just are unable to win. But I think that looking at
Sandy Barber.
looking at Penn State sports and the uptrend since Barber leaving and everything is obviously a great sign, and it's making sure that, or it's showing that Pat Kraft is not just preaching. He's practicing what he's preaching. He's going all in. He's buying in, and you see this especially with Penn State football, looking at bringing in Stan Drayton, bringing in Jim Knowles, bringing in all these different guys, some who we will talk about later. I mean, I think that just goes to show just the all-out investment that he has and the expectations that he has for Penn State football.
Yeah, I mean, he's putting the money where his mouth is. At this point, I mean, every athletic director is going to talk about, wanting to win national championships and things like that. But I think, we've seen it on the field or on the court or, wherever. I mean, you can see tangible impacts on different sports. Obviously, wrestling's dynasty has continued.
Yeah, that's not stopping.
He talked about that a lot, but like women's volleyball won a national championship. A lot of other teams had great years. I think, baseball's headed in the right direction. Basketball, you could go back and forth, but I do think Mike Rhodes kind of has that program trending upward. Just other, football even had one of its best years, making the Final Four, one of the best seasons in recent memory. So, I mean, you can definitely see the results on the field. And he talked a lot about that, how he wants, all the sports to be successful, with obviously football being the main one. And that's the revenue sport. That's the one that's bringing in the money. So it's going to get a majority of the attention. He spent a lot of time talking about that. But he mentioned 10 sports right now at Penn State are ranked inside the top 25, which is pretty impressive to think about. And Penn State will be in the running for the Directors' Cup this year, which is, the best university for all-around athletics. But I also thought he spoke really candidly about some topics that James Franklin does not like to get into very much. So Franklin maybe might not be too happy that Kraft was kind of putting some of that information out there. But he straight up said, like, first of all, I thought it was interesting. He said we're where we need to be in NIL right now. And if you ask James Franklin, like, what's the NIL looking like, he'll say, it's horrible and we need more money. And Franklin's going to keep pushing for more and more NIL. Yeah. He's never going to be satisfied. Kraft said, like, they're in a good spot right now, which is kind of contrary to what we've heard in the past from whether it's Franklin or some other people who have kind of said that, it's not in a good spot. The other thing that I thought was interesting was he said they need to get a transfer portal wide receiver, which was really funny because like Franklin would never go out and say that blatantly, but Kraft
especially
said,
when you
like,
already brought transfers in. Like,
right,
that's kind of crazy. I'm like, okay, like, I don't know how much he's, been at workouts, and they're obviously just starting their, spring ball transition and everything. But, like, yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that it's hard because you would think, like, or like from an outsider's perspective, James Franklin obviously is the bigger voice because, he's the head coach. But at the end of the day, Pat Kraft can fire him any day that he wants. Like, he can obviously extend him as well. Like, he is his boss. So he can really say what he wants. I mean, we saw that at Thon saying that Trace McSorley is back on staff. And, like, he is just, like, he has that power, and sometimes you forget that. Like athletic directors, they kind of sit in the shadows. Even though I would say Pat Kraft is one of the ones that are more into the picture. Like you see him at the games on the sidelines, jumping around, things like that. But I mean, I kind of want to go back to what you said, just about a chance to win that Directors Cup and everything. I think that is another just important thing to think about, because some schools do say, okay, I'm going all in on football. And again, he said they're where they are at, at the in the right spot for NIL, but it's still like you could say, okay, I'm putting all these resources into football and I'm not doing anything else. When you do that, it just kind of makes it hard, because if the football team ever fans out, what do you have as a program? And that obviously reflects on your job. I mean, the first thing I think about is Alabama. Alabama obviously has football, but with Kalen DeBoer coming, there is a change. There is, obviously the team is not getting better. It's going to get better, but right now, it's not what it was in the Nick Saban era. There's a lot of work to do, but for the whole program of University of Alabama, you have the basketball team, which I can't remember where they fell after losing to Auburn, but they were as much as number 2 in the country. You have sports softball. They're usually good at baseball, things like that. Like there's always different sports that Alabama is succeeding at, and they're getting better. Like you look at men's basketball. Men's basketball went up a lot. Like they used to have Avery Johnson at coach, fellow Avery, of course. I gotta know my Averys, but just as a whole, Pat Kraft's vision and where he wants the whole Penn State athletics department headed, or where he has the Penn State athletics department headed, has him in a great position, and he could really make a lot of money if Penn State and James Franklin comes home with a national championship anytime soon.
I mean, yeah, I think it's like you said, like you can point at Alabama or even just the SEC as a whole and look at, how dominant the SEC has been in football. And then you look at what's happened in basketball. Some of the football money is starting to, go into basketball, and they're building up their programs and things like that. And all of a sudden the SEC is the best basketball conference in the country. So it obviously kind of bleeds into other sports, but you want to have football as the main focus. But yeah, there was a lot of good stuff from Kraft, and he was there for like 45 minutes, something like that. So gave us a lot of really interesting information, things like that. I think the only other thing that I would mention is he talked about the blue-white game, Penn State's annual spring game, which will be happening because some schools around the country have decided not to have a spring game this year. I know Nebraska was like the first one to do it, and Matt Rule kind of talked about that. He doesn't want other teams to be basically scouting his team throughout the spring game and then like making offers, NIL offers to some of his players and trying to poach them.
Well, Matt Rule. So there's also a thing called practice film. I promise you, those players are sending that practice film around somewhere or another. Maybe it's just the son of one of the coaches. You see this, and all of a sudden, it flies into Steve Sarkisian's hands. Oh my gosh, I don't know how that happened. So all I'm saying, you can't avoid that, and I also just don't think holding your players hostage is a good idea. I don't think that's a program that guys would really want to be at, especially when you're not at the status where you want to be. Obviously, Nebraska is still in that, I wouldn't say rebuild, but still in progressing. They're progressing. Obviously, I think in the next 5 years, you could see them being a top 15 team, things like that, but there's no guarantee. They have to get there. Dylan Raiola has to be Dylan, or Pat Mahomes if he wants to be. But they're not there yet. So I wouldn't do that. I think, especially for Penn State, when you talk about what it does, not just for the football team, but for the community. I mean, Penn State is big on the community. It's Happy Valley, things like that. So I don't see any benefit to it. And I mean, if I'm a fan, I would be so glad that they're having it this year, and I would hope they have it for years to come, because it's not just a chance to showcase and see where this player is at, where this player is at, where that player is at. Again, it's a community event. I mean, you have the whole blue-white weekend, you have all the theatrics, things like that, and it's a low-stakes way to get into Beaver Stadium. It's not always easy to get into Beaver Stadium. It's expensive. So as a fan, I want to just free, okay, I've been in here. It might not have been 110 or whatever the capacity would be next year, but it's still, I'm in Beaver Stadium, so.
Yeah, I mean, there are 5-year-old kids out there who have never been to a Penn State football game, but their parents went there or whatever, and it's a great opportunity to come out in the spring, take your family to the game. Probably better weather than what you would get in the fall.
Most of the time.
Yeah, usually. You never know, because the state college winters are 8 months long. But
I thought we were getting to. I mean, I thought we were in. So we were in dreadful winter. I thought we were in full spring, but we weren't even in
It
full
was the
spring.
fake
It
one.
was just 3 hours of full spring. That's all.
Yeah.
We're not even in there yet. So I'm waiting for full spring. We're not even close to spring itself. So no guarantee for all those recruits from Florida. Zeyda, obviously. Sorry.
Yeah, I wore my shorts today. I was hoping it would be nice. I was trying to manifest it. It didn't really work.
I wore just a hoodie yesterday. I said, nope, need the coat today. Nope. I thought it was going to get better. I think I saw snow in the forecast next week too. So, yeah, we'll see how it is. I don't know. Might be a lot of indoor practices unless they just want to make them, feel it and just be outside for no reason in cold March. But, hey.
We'll see. We'll see what the weather's like. But one thing's for sure is the stadium will be undergoing renovations for that. So Pat Kraft said, could look a little bit different. There might be some kind of temporary bleachers, things like that for the fans. It's not like they're ever at, full capacity, 100K. It's usually, I think, 60, 65K.
Yeah,
so maybe they can just fit everyone into the three sides of the stadium that are still standing. But it will look a little bit different. We can pivot to Stan Drayton, who we got to talk to for the first time since he was hired at Penn State. We talked a little bit about it last week and kind of his resume, what he brings to the table. Most recently, the head coach at Temple didn't necessarily have a lot of success in that role. But regardless, he's back as a running backs coach, which is where he really shined at, previous stops, whether Texas, Ohio State, I think it was the Chicago Bears. But he also talked about kind of getting back into coaching, what that means to him. Said he really couldn't live without coaching. He said, when he was at home, he was just antsy all the time. He really wanted to get back into coaching, and he was driving himself crazy, driving his wife crazy. and now he gets to go back and do it. Winter workouts getting started up. He's out there working with the guys. But what were your biggest takeaways from Drayton?
I mean, my biggest takeaways is that he seems like exactly what we expect out of him, which means an experienced guy. I mean, you talk about his love for football. One, that is going to make him so much easier to fit into the culture with guys like Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton, because I can tell you from being at practice, from seeing them at games, they love football. Specifically, Kaytron Allen, not a knock against Nick, but Kaytron Allen, I don't know, he just runs and it's basically like an earthquake, the sounds that he makes. I don't even know what's going on. He's just I'm like, okay. But he loves football, and I think that Penn State knew what they wanted. They wanted a guy that would not just mesh with them, but obviously be able to mold the guys in the future, be able to make them ready, because you only have a one year with Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen. You're getting you could really say all-star running backs coach. Specifically as a running backs coach, he's an all-star. You can talk about head coach, that's a whole different story, but a lot of guys just aren't really made to be a head coach, and that's okay. Maybe his time isn't now, maybe his time is later, but regardless, he's back at running backs coach. You have experience in the room, and I just think that his love for football and his ability to connect with the players like that, especially coaching at a place like Temple, I do think that it is a positive for Penn State.
Yeah. He also said that, just looking at Nick and Kaytron, both of them, he said that they're as talented as anyone he's ever coached before, which is obviously high praise coming from him. And looking at some of the guys that he's worked with in the past, like Ezekiel Elliott and Bijan Robinson, just to name a couple.
Come on now. Just a few,
Yeah, he thinks Nick and Kaytron are right up there with anyone that he's ever coached in terms of talent. So that'll be interesting to see there. And it's hard to see any sort of drop off because both those guys are entering year 4, and at this point it's there's only so much coaching you can really do. Yeah. They kind of know what they're doing at this point, and they should be able to have another great season, probably close to 1,000 yards, if not over this year again. And then we can move on. The next thing I wanted to touch on is just Penn State hiring Trace McSorley. Obviously, they bring home a fan favorite. I don't know if I would go so far as to call him, a star for Penn State, but he was certainly loved by the fans and for what he did, and obviously won a Big Ten championship, which is still, Penn State's most recent Big Ten championship. So obviously a lot of love for Trace McSorley here in Happy Valley, and he tried his hand in the NFL and bounced around a few teams. Ultimately, he comes back. In terms of a quarterback coaching standpoint, I'm not sure how he'll fare as a coach, but I think to me, the most important thing is just the motivational aspect, because you look at some of those teams he played on, and those guys were ready to run through a brick wall for him. He was the motivator. He had the iconic home run celebration. He was just a fiery guy. And I think having someone like that in the quarterback room, kind of that emotional catalyst, I think could be really important. So I think that'll be his biggest impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think also just his experience as a backup in the NFL, like he wasn't there for too long. But I will say, with bouncing around to many teams, first of all, if teams keep calling, you're doing something right. Josh Johnson. So if teams keep calling, he's doing something right. And just as a backup quarterback, a lot of what you are doing is really just kind of coaching. Like, you're on the sideline, you're not playing. Usually they might have the headset on. When he was third string, probably not the headset, but you are beside someone who does have the headset. You're around, obviously, not just, well, football minds, obviously, but like you're around different quarterbacks and you're really getting to learn what it means to be a true starting quarterback. So I think that he's going to be the assistant quarterbacks coach. So there's not like he has to transcend this offense. He's our new offensive coordinator. He's our new pass game coordinator. He's an assistant quarterbacks coach. So I think his role will really be that, relatability, being able to, talk to Drew and guys like that. Obviously, he's familiar with the program. A lot of guys, know him and love him. And just kind of giving him a couple tidbits here and there on just how to make it to the next level. This year for Drew is a lot about not just winning a national championship, but putting himself in the best position to go to the NFL. You remember the weeks before the Orange Bowl where it was, so Drew come out and then all of a sudden he doesn't have as good of a game, and it's like, so we don't know exactly where his stock is. So obviously Trace McSorley is not a game changer, but I do think he has a positive impact on the program, and it's always great to bring in guys with familiarity, guys that know the culture, and just guys that will be able to just relate with guys like Drew and, get him ready to go on game day. And he'll feel him. Like, sometimes it's easier when somebody has been in your direct shoes. Like, he's been in the same uniform, standing in the same spot he stood in different moments. I mean, obviously, I would say Drew is the more talented quarterback, but there's always things you can pick up from a former NFL player.
Yeah, I mean, Drew definitely has like the advantage in terms of physical traits. He's obviously a lot bigger. Trace was always on the smaller side.
Yeah.
But I think Trace had kind of some of those intangibles, just kind of that grit. I think he was a smart quarterback, things like that played to his advantage, and maybe those are some things that he can help Drew work on. And I think it won't be long before we see Sean Clifford joining the staff as well as another
What you
assistant.
trying to say? You don't think he's better than Malik Willis?
I'm just detecting a pattern. I think Penn State likes to bring in these former players. And I mean, we just saw Dan Connor as well get promoted from a defensive analyst to linebackers coach, which, breaking water's wet. We all saw that one coming.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have told you that months ago, but now it's official. I mean, we get to view practice. We get those little practice windows, and Dan Connor's the one leading the linebackers pretty much every time. Tom Allen technically held that title of linebackers coach last season, but if we're being honest, Dan Connor was kind of the one running things behind the scenes, and with Tom Allen leaving, obviously that opens up the opportunity for him to officially get that promotion. I think he'll probably be doing the same things he's been doing. He just has a different title.
Yeah. Probably more money, I would assume. I mean, assistant coach or position coach versus analyst, I would assume.
Yeah, it probably comes with a bit of a pay raise. I mean, he was already
maybe a bonus, something like that. Enough. I mean, coaching.
And he was already like relaying the plays last year too.
Yeah, so might as well.
Mike.
Yeah.
Because no one could understand Tom Allen's voice.
I'm so sorry, Tom.
Kobe
man,
could not understand Tom Allen's voice.
I remember asking Kobe about it, and I just heard him. I said, "Oh, he didn't understand a single word Tom Allen was saying." I mean, hey, it comes with it, I mean, he probably spent a lot of time yelling, stuff like that. So, hey, he's a seasoned coach. Things happen, but I mean, I think, but to talk about Dan Connor, I think that just having that relatability in the room, and again, I'm seeing a pattern. I think Penn State wants relatability, and they want experience. So if you don't have the experience in terms of, obviously Dan Connor has the playing experience, but he doesn't have the coaching experience. He's relatable. Guys will want to be with him. Same thing with Trace McSorley. But you look at the other guys, Stan Drayton, championship experience. He was at Florida with Phil Troutwain, championship experience as well. You look at the rest of the staff, Jim Knowles, championship experience. So I think Penn State is seeing that the recipe to winning a championship is relatability and championship experience. And obviously, even if you talk about the players, you add that into it, having players with a lot of experience. They also bringing all these guys back. They're relatable. They know each other. They know how to play together. I think Penn State is making their intentions pretty clear. They won a national championship, and they won it pretty soon. Like, I think that's really all that I'm seeing through, their build of their offensive and defensive staffs.
Yeah, definitely. And one more addition to the coaching staff was Naz Oliver, recruiting coordinator. He fills the role of Khalil Ahmad, who left to be a GM at Temple, which is obviously a sizable upgrade in jobs, and a lot of universities are starting to add general managers to the football programs. Pat Kraft actually talked about that a little bit, and just kind of said, it was something that they would look into and consider, but they also had some kind of drawbacks to adding a GM because they don't want someone to be in charge. I think the way Kraft put it is basically he wants James Franklin to be the head of the program, and if you hire a GM, the GM's going to want to kind of be ahead of James Franklin in the hierarchy and kind of control the program. Yeah. And he said at a lot of other universities, the GM controls the roster, in terms of like recruiting, transfers, who they're paying, what, things like that. And that can be an issue because obviously when you have a lot of, people in power, there can be, disagreements and things like that. So I think that's kind of the drawback that is preventing Penn State from getting a GM. But Khalil Ahmad leaves to be the GM at Temple. So in his place, they hire Naz Oliver, who, quite frankly, no one knows anything about this guy.
He's a back-to-back champion. That's what I can tell you. At Malcolm X Shabazz High School in New Jersey. He's a back-to-back champion. He played at Tennessee, not a lot, but like he played there. But I mean, bringing in a guy with New Jersey roots, obviously from New Jersey, being able to still recruit within that pipeline, I think that's important. I know that he's gotten a lot of guys offers, and a lot of high school recruiting specifically is just having those connections, knowing people, this and that. I think that's, what makes him stand out. And I also think that it's not a position that you have to absolutely nail if you're Penn State. You don't need to put all of your resources into recruiting because you have the coaching. And you also know you have the scouting to where you don't need to, in terms of recruiting, you don't need the 5 stars. You just need the guys that are able to develop into 5-star caliber players or program players, guys that can win Penn State games. So I think it was a low-risk hire for Penn State. And I think, for him, it was kind of like, here's your opportunity to go up in the ranks. You can start as, a recruiting coordinator and work your way up. It might not be the end of his journey. Again, he was head coach there, head coach at his alma mater high school, which I'm blanking. Oh, St. Peter's Prep. There we go. He was a head coach at St. Peter's Prep before he left for what I say, Malcolm X Shabazz? Yeah, there we go. So, like, he obviously is a guy that's trying to make his way up in the coaching ranks. So, like, this is his opportunity, and I guess he has an ability to relate to players. Obviously, I don't know him. Obviously, I don't know his, full recruiting background and everything. But I think, being able to get guys offers in high school is something that can translate to the higher level. And he's obviously at a high-level program, so it's not that he has to do so much. He doesn't have to push all these buttons. He has to be there. He has to be relatable. He has to know how to talk to guys, which is a lot of, high school. A lot of people, if you love your coach, it makes it so much easier to work and get things together. It doesn't mean he has to be, the nicest guy in the world, but still having that love for your coach and being relatable is something that's important, not just in high school football, but in college football recruiting.
Yeah, he's definitely had some success at the high school level, whether as a player or as a coach. I think the biggest question mark is that I don't think he has any college coaching experience. Yeah. So obviously it'll be kind of a transition there. And, I'm not going to knock the hire or anything like that, but it's just, it was a little bit off the radar for me. I mean, I tried to look this guy up, and he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. As far last I checked,
247 Sports.
He doesn't.
Receiver and DB, Tennessee, 0 stars.
0-star recruit. Maybe he has that chip on his shoulder.
His sports reference, I saw 2 games played. So, hey, I honestly don't remember who was at Tennessee at that time. So, hopefully they, taught him well. But, I would really assume, and obviously I don't know anything, but I would assume he has some sort of connection within the program that knows of his work because, how else do you really know guys? Unless, through the coaching conventions and stuff, you get to meet different guys. I know I saw him as a keynote speaker for some coaching convention. I don't know exactly which one it is, but maybe James Franklin was there or Terry Smith or something like that. And they, just, oh, this is a great guy, and it progressed into something. But obviously, they go through the process. They know what they're getting. Obviously, they know a lot more than we do. So, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see how the recruiting goes. It'll be interesting to see if, it'll become a thing where he's recruiting heavily defensively, offensively. I don't know definitively where he ended up, staying at Tennessee. So, I don't know what type of recruiter he is, but again, we'll see. But Penn State is not, big on like we need to have. Well, I guess James Franklin wants to have the most NIL, but like he just wants it to be fair. I would say he doesn't. It's not about like I don't want to put $40 million in somebody's pocket. Like that's not his goal. So like I think that makes it a little easier. You don't need the home run guy, big baller, Fran Brown type of personality. You just need a guy, and he's the guy. So
yeah. I mean, James Franklin obviously saw something that he liked, and Franklin has a pretty good track record when it comes to hiring assistant coaches. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. And it'll be a little bit hard to kind of measure his success at Penn State because you can always attribute a high ranking commitment to a lot of different factors.
Yeah, so many different.
So
factors.
It's a little bit hard to measure, but obviously if Franklin felt like it was a move that they needed to make, then and it also just maintains that relationship with the New Jersey area. I think Khalil Ahmad had a big presence there as well, so it kind of stays in that Penn State footprint. But I think as of now, that's all the updates to the staff. It seems like there's a new guy either coming in or leaving every week.
Yeah.
Obviously keeping us on our toes here. I guess the only other thing we can touch on here is just the NFL Combine. Penn State has 5 guys invited. We know now that Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren have decided not to work out at the Combine. It's unclear whether or not they'll work out at Penn State's Pro Day, which will be a little bit later on. I don't know. Do you think it makes a difference?
I think for Abdul Carter, I'll start with Abdul Carter. For Abdul Carter, I think it makes a difference if he gets to Pro Day and he is not ready. But I don't think it's like this, like, oh, you didn't do the Combine, but you did it. Because from what I'm seeing, he's expected to be ready for the Pro Day. So whether he does everything, whether he runs the 40, this and that, I don't know. But if he is at full health by the Pro Day, and maybe he's at full health right now, but he's like, I just want to give it a little more time, make sure I'm completely good. It's still outside of the arm injury. It was a long season, and he worked hard. That's the closest he's played to the ball. Maybe it's physically a little different for him. Maybe he's still like, okay, I have to get to this weight. I have to get here. I have to get there. So if he goes to the Pro Day and he balls, it makes no difference. And the only difference I think it really makes for him is that him wanting to be number one. I think people want to see some numbers before they put you at number one, just because it's like we haven't seen you in so long. Like they kind of pushed you to the back. Like I know Mel Kiper has him going number one right now to the Titans. And honestly, I think he's talented enough to be a number one pick, but I do think that he spoke his way into being number one pick, which, I mean, good strategy. I mean, it worked. I've seen people do it like all the time. Like, yeah, I'm this good of a player. All of a sudden, people start talking about him. But as long as he backs up, I think he's fine. Tyler Warren, I think there was really no upside of him performing. I don't think that he does crazy numbers. I think he puts up just about the normal numbers. And if you look at the rest of the tight ends, I know Colston Leveland isn't working on the Combine, and another tight end isn't working on the Combine, and they're like the top 3 tight ends. Loveland's the only one that could go in the first round. So I think for Tyler Warren, it's like I kind of did all I need to do. Like y'all have seen me do everything. According to Cooper Cousins, he golfs as well. So like we know what he can do. So like why? There's really no point, and that's just a trend, across the whole Combine history. Like through the past 5 years, you're seeing guys like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. Like, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. So I mean, I'm not surprised. I would have wanted to see Abdul Carter if he was healthy, because seeing his numbers and putting that with his profile, his build and everything would help just solidify. If, like, say he runs a 4.41, 4.42, something like that, like he's probably going number one. Let's be honest. So yeah, I think that'll be really the most interesting thing. But I think both of them made I wouldn't say the right decision, but I think it's a good decision. I'm more of I like to see you in the Combine, so I can't say right, but I do think it's a good decision. Yeah,
I mean, I think both of them are at the point right now where it's like, do they really need to show anything else that they haven't already put on film? Like, I think they've already, established themselves as some of the top players. I mean, in Abdul's case, like, he's number one on most people's big boards. It's like his stock cannot go high. Like, you can't go higher than the number one.
But it can go lower to the Patriots. Right. I'm just saying. Anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he has a terrible Combine, maybe he gets to go to the Eagles like he wants to.
Oh, no, not that. I thought you were just saying the Patriots. Oh, no. That's the one positive of him not participating in the Combine, because if he does something crazy, or if he's not good at all and he's not ready, he may as well fall. He won't fall to 32 realistically, but it could get to the point where the Eagles are like, I'm trading up for this guy. Like, we have guys that we can kind of dump, older guys, things like that. But I also do think another important thing to think about with both of those guys, they are the best at their position. There is not a debate. Like, Colston Loveland was up there, and I think I'm saying his name right. He was up there with Tyler Warren for a little bit, but after a while, Tyler Warren just passed him. Like, it wasn't close. Abdul Carter, easily the best edge in the draft.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. We'll be back with you next week. For more football coverage, you can find us at psucollegian.com and follow us on socials.
Salute.